Hello? Hello, please. Come to order. Hello, my name's Stan Taylor, and I am chair of the Lane Peace Center, and welcome to the afternoon event, Water Justice. The Lane Peace Center has now been around for 4 years, and in addition to the annual symposium, we also work on educational programs here at Lane Community College. One of the programs that's already up and running is a course of study in peace studies leading to an associate transfer degree. But we're also working on other programs. Within a year, we're hoping to get a program on community organizing up, and also a program that will be a transition from high school to college program focusing on peace studies. So these are things that are happening here at the college, and I have to really thank the college, people like Donna Keiki back there that are providing the support for the program to move forward. Absolutely. It may be a little hard to get to, but I want to point out where the bathrooms are. You may need to go through, or you will need to go through the dressing rooms. On the right, or your left, is the men's room, and to the your right is the women's room. So that's the directions to get into the bathrooms if you need to. I know the floor is a little crowded, but it's still worth it. Also wanted to call attention to the killdeer birds that are out right next to the hall. It's quite extraordinary that killdeer have laid their eggs right on the keyhole next to the longhouse. It's like a blessing that they've done. We've kind of cordoned that off, and we'd appreciate if you avoid where the killdeer are to protect them and their environment. So thank you, killdeer. Also, many of you have probably picked up programs, and if you've picked up a program, you're welcome to keep it if you're going to share it with other people, but we are reusing the programs for each session, so when you're done with it, please leave it so that we can collect them and reuse them. It's also true that the cups that you're drinking water out of are all compostable, so make sure you put those into the compost instead of the trash so that we are appropriately working with nature on that. I want to thank the committee that helped organize this event, the Peace Center Steering Committee. They put in long hours to make this happen, and overall, please give them a hand. We also have quite a volunteer group that's helping us today to actually make this event happen. So many of them are students who have got on board. So again, another round of appreciation for those who are helping us as well. And then we have a number of sponsors that have helped with this event. These include the Associated Students of Lane Community College, the Classified Professional Development Team, the Community Alliance of Lane County, the LCC Institute for Sustainable Practices, the LCC Diversity Council, the Lane Faculty Professional Development, and Lane Professional Organizational Development, and also the Red Lion that helped provide rooms for our guests while they're here. So thanks to all those sponsors as well. There is information about some companion events that are happening this weekend that you should know about. Tomorrow, from 1 to 5:30, there's going to be a wild salmon and party benefit that features the Winham and Wintu, who are part of the presenter group that we have here today. And that's going to be at Amigos Multicultural Center at 21 North Grand. Again, that's 1 to 5:30. I think there are a couple of flyers that might get circulated so that you can see that in more direct format. Also, Agnes Baker Pilgrim is also going to be featured in a couple of events this weekend on Saturday and Sunday. On Saturday morning, the 16th at the Bijou, she's going to be featured there as for this next 7 generation a film of the International Council of 13 Grandmothers. And that's again at 10 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. tomorrow. And then on Sunday, she's going to be doing a reading at Tsunami Books in the evening from 7 to 8 p.m. And also on Sunday, she's going to be doing a blessing for the Willamette River down at the eWeb River Plaza at 2:30 in the afternoon. So all things that are directly related to this event, companion events, we hope that you go to see at least some portion of these things happening this weekend. So this session is on water justice, and we're very lucky to have two great workers in the water justice area. Debbie Davis is with the Environmental Justice Coalition for Water. She's the policy director, and that's an organization of 70 statewide coalitions in California of tribes, community-based, and nonprofit organizations working to achieve water justice. They help to build the capacity in low-income and communities of color and are working together to ensure that all communities have access to safe, affordable water for basic human needs and water resources. You know, we often don't really recognize how water and justice are tied together, how so many people who don't have resources are being told they don't have access to water. It's an incredibly huge issue, and we have Debbie Davis here to tell us about it.
Thank you, Stan, and thank you all for being here. Again, my name is Debbie Davis. I'm with the Environmental Justice Coalition for Water from California. I am always excited to do the after lunch panel. It's always the best panel of the day because everyone's bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and ready to listen. But seriously, actually, I do like doing the after lunch panel because I take it as an extra challenge to be especially entertaining and especially provocative. But to do that, I need your help. So I hope that you will be engaged too. I will ask lots of questions. I invite people to shout out answers and to participate as much as you can, especially with this large a crowd. But I also want to say that I find this to be particularly challenging. For those of you who had the privilege to be here this morning, we heard from some amazing people. And so it's a little bit intimidating to speak after them. So I hope you'll bear with me as I try to overcome my intimidation. So the title of my talk today is, What Are You Willing to Pay for Water Justice? We talk a lot about what we're willing to pay for things. We talk a lot about what we're willing to pay for water. But do we ever ask ourselves what we're willing to pay, and pay not necessarily in monetary form, but what we're willing to pay in money or sacrifices or activities or actions for water justice? How many of you actually think about that? That's a pretty good handful in the room. That's more than I often see, so good way to go, Lane Community College folks. We in California, we're in the process of starting a movement to ask this very question. So just a little bit about the Environmental Justice Coalition for Water. We are a statewide coalition, and our membership includes tribes, community-based, and nonprofit organizations. And we actually span a range. It's a little bit of a philosophical difference within the environmental justice movement, which is a part of it's the movement we are a part of. Some folks believe that you should just have environmental justice communities within the movement, and we actually have taken a slightly different approach where we're striving to build collaborations across communities. So our membership includes environmental groups.
Little interruption here.
All right. Oh man. All right. All right. So I'm going to be a little taller today. So we include environmental groups, environmental justice groups, tribes, faith-based groups. We have a couple water agency folks. We try and branch out and bring in the variety of people who would have concerns about water justice. So I want to start with something to think about throughout the entirety of my presentation. And it's a quote, actually, that the Special Rapporteur on Human Right to Water actually shared with us when she visited California at the end of February. And I'm just going to read it because it's brilliant. The test of our progress is not whether we add more to the abundance of those who have much. It is whether we provide enough for those who have too little. So, you all can think to yourself whether you think we're making progress or not. I have my own thoughts that I'll share. So the truth about water justice. The truth is that there are millions of people in the world who don't have access to the basic necessity, the basic human right of water for basic human needs, for bathing, for drinking, for cooking, etc. In California, we don't know precisely how many people don't have access because we don't do a very good job of keeping track, because it's just not a priority. We have one of our member organizations, the Community Water Center, located in the Central Valley. They have gone through an extensive process to try to find the number just for the Central Valley. And we guess, or we don't guess, now that they've gone through the process, we think it's about 250,000 people on any given day lack access to basic water resources in their communities just in the Central Valley. And our Central Valley is not the most populated area in our state. So we know that there are many, many more. And we also know that there are about 8.5 million Californians that are at risk of losing access to safe water because they have only one or two drinking water sources, and those already have elevated, though not violations, they have elevated levels of toxic contaminants. So what is the truth really about water justice? Well, the truth is, it's the inequality, stupid. I just love this article. It was in Mother Jones. All of this comes back to how we are organized as a society. All of it. We're talking about water, but you could apply this to a million other things. You could apply it to housing, you could apply it to food, you could apply it across the board pretty much. Basically, our society is set up to make the rich people richer. And in this case, this graph is just talking about the top 0.1%. 0.1%. Top 0.1%. And they are just racking up the dollars, while at the bottom, we've pretty much stayed the same. And I say we, because one of the things that always frustrates me is in the US, we have this idea that pretty much everybody's middle class. So you have folks who are pretty high up on the scale, and they say, oh, I'm just middle class. I might have my 6-bedroom home and my 4 cars in the garage, but I'm really middle class. And then you have the people on the other end of the spectrum who are working really hard every day just to make ends meet, and they're sure that they're also middle class. And what that does is it creates an environment where there's not a force for change. So one thing I invite you to do is to ask yourself, where do I fit in this picture? And if I really identify where I fit, what does that say about how I choose to be in this world? What does that really say? If you instead of saying, oh, I'm middle class, which is kind of where everybody sort of feels like they should be, right? Unless you're really rich, in which case you have entitlement and you think you should be really rich. But otherwise, if you let go of that assumption, and actually this whole conversation is going to be about letting go of the myths that help us to live every day, to wake up every morning, to go to work every day, to come home, take care of our families, go to bed, et cetera, and keep doing that over and over and over without tearing our hair out. But for this talk, if you can let go of that and just ask yourself, let go of the myths and ask yourself, what is really the truth? So the inequities in water start with how we choose to use our water. I was talking to some folks yesterday, and somebody asked me a question, and they said, well, so in this world where we don't have enough water, and I said, well, wait a minute. At any given moment, there are the same number of water drops on this planet. The same number, every second, always the same. There were times in the history of this planet when we had enough water. So what's different now? We have more people, that is definitely true. But interestingly, we have enough water for every person on this planet. In fact, we have more than enough water for every person on this planet. What it really comes down to is how we choose to use the resource that we have. And the way we've chosen, unfortunately, is we've chosen to sell our water, to commodify our water, to put a price on it, and if you can afford to pay the price, then you can have it by and large, with some restrictions, but very limited restrictions. And so one of the questions I like to ask is, what sector in the world is the biggest water user? Yell louder, I can't. Agriculture. Agriculture. Irrigated agriculture is the largest water user in the world. Uses 60%. Oh, I should have asked you to guess what percentage. How many of you would have guessed 60%? 60% of the world's water goes to irrigated agriculture. 41% in the US. In California, we are entirely special because 80% of our developed water goes to irrigated agriculture. And in California, 90% of that is what we call agribusiness. That means they're not family farms. These are big conglomerations, and they're pretty much in it for the profit. They're not so much interested in taking care of the communities in which they're farming. Oh, and I'll talk more about that a little bit later. But 80%, and if you think about California, if you've read any news about California, you know we are in the midst of water wars. And they're being fought because agriculture says we don't have enough water, but they get 80% of the water in the state. Conversely, all of our conservation programs are focused on urban water conservation. Agriculture is not required to conserve a single drop of water in California. So in our urban areas, another interesting fact is that our greatest water use is for outdoor irrigation, for watering your lawns. That's the biggest use. One of the things I always like to mention is that one of our senators, Senator Feinstein, was quoted as saying that every Californian has a God-given right to a green lawn. To a green lawn. So we make our choices. But interestingly, again, our conservation programs in the urban areas are focused on toilet replacement, which is not a bad thing by any stretch. But we do that because it's easier, frankly, than telling people they can't have green lawns. So again, we make our choices. So in California, with irrigated agriculture using the most of our water, they're also our largest polluter of our water. And one other fact I like to mention is that the profits made by agriculture during the drought we had in California went up every single year in the face of drought. They were in Congress every day saying, we need more water, you're putting us out of business. Look, we had to mow down all these trees because we couldn't water them. And yet their profits went up every single year. At the same time, more farm workers were out of jobs. And guess who they paraded up to the state capitol to say, hey, we need more water? It was all those farm workers. So in California, we have this inequality that exists. And it's, again, the same inequality that exists in everything that we do. It's the fact that we have folks with power and money who are setting the agenda, who rule our state house. They rule our Dems and our Republicans. I mean, our Dems try to be a little nicer to us, but frankly, it's all the same politics. The people who are paying them to get elected are the people that they're going to try and help out along the way. So one of the things that I really want to make sure is clear in what I'm saying to you today is that every one of us who gets up in the morning and takes care of our kids and sends them off to school and goes to work and comes home and feeds them dinner and puts them to bed and starts the whole thing over again the next day, we're complicit in this system. Every one of us. Because and myself included, I am the policy director. I spend much of my time in Sacramento in the state capitol. And frankly, what I can get for the people that I work for is marginal change. I get a little bit of, a couple million here, a couple 100,000 over there. But I'm not changing the system that produces this inequity. I know I'm not. But I do that because at least I'm getting a little something, because the change that has to happen is bigger than me. But the change that has to happen has to start with me, and it has to start with every one of you, because only as we all start off together do we get that to that level of bigger change. I wanted to share one case study. One of our communities that we work with, it's a small community called San Jerardo in the Salinas Valley that's between San Francisco and Monterey. And it's a very small, that's the community right there, that's its footprint. It's a 63 household community. It's largely farm workers. And it was started actually as a farm worker co-op to provide housing. So they actually own they own their homes and the property, and they own all of their water systems. They had been using a groundwater well to provide water for their community. And then they found in doing their regular testing that it was contaminated with nitrates and with 1,2,3-trichloropropane. Interestingly, the state water board, which regulates our surface water, said, oh, the nitrates are probably coming from your unlined wastewater pond. So we're going to have to fine you every day that you're out of compliance with our water quality standards. This is a small community. The average household income is $14,000 a year. But and they pay you'll see how much they pay. They pay a lot of money for their wastewater and for their drinking water already. But now that we know your drinking water is unsafe to drink, we're sure you caused the problem, so you're not going to have any safe drinking water, and we're going to charge you extra because you're violating our laws. If you look at that picture, I wish I had a pointer. The drinking water well is actually off the picture this way. What surrounds? Farms. What else is in the water? Does anybody know what 1,2,3-trichloropropane is? No. It's a fumigant. It's used to fumigate the crops. That's also in the drinking water well. I'm pretty sure that didn't come out of the wastewater ponds. So we have a system that's set up that said to this community, you're going to have to figure out how to take care of the nitrates that are in your water, because we're sure you're causing them yourself. We don't know where the 1,2,3-trichloropropane is coming from, because certainly it's not all those farms around your house. So all of the responsibility is put on the community to solve the problem. When in fact, we're pretty sure, I can't give you the science, but we're pretty sure that it's the farming operations around the community that have created the problem. But there is no mechanism in California for us to get those farming operations to cover the cost that this community is going to incur. So San Jerardo is one of those red dots. All of the others are other wells that have come up contaminated with nitrates. So it's an epidemic in the Central Coast and in the Central Valley of California. Uh-oh. There we go. Even if we didn't know that all those farms were right around that little community, we do know that the sources of nitrate in groundwater, the largest source by far, 53%, are fertilizers. About 27% is animal manure, largely from confined animal feed operations. Point source, which is the category that the unlined septic pond would be in, 6%. So we told the agricultural folks, we said, the community will pay its 6% if you all cover your share. They didn't really like that. So what all of this comes down to is this community average annual income for these families, $14,000, $113 a month for their drinking water, and $65 a month for their wastewater. How much do you all pay here in Eugene? Nothing.
Less than that.
Any? $238 per 1,000 gallons. So that would make an average family's monthly bill about.
Well, with sewer, it comes up to $40
or $50 a month for both water and sewer.
Could you please repeat the amounts that they're paying in California? 238 per 1,000 gallons, and then what was the other one? 238 per 1,000 gallons.
238 per 1,000 gallons. 238 per 1,000 gallons. 238 per 1,000 gallons. 238 per 1,000 gallons. 238 per 1,000 gallons. 238 per 1,000 gallons. 238 per 1,000 gallons. 238 per 1,000 gallons. 238 per 1,000 gallons. 238 per 1,000 gallons. 238 per 1,000 gallons. 238 per 1,000 gallons. 238 per 1,000 gallons. 238 per 1,000 gallons. 238 per 1,000 gallons. 238 per 1,000 gallons. 238 per 1,000 gallons. 238 per 1,000 gallons. 238 per 1,000 gallons. 238 per 1,000 gallons. 238 per Well, so this community of San Gerardo is at $113 a month for their water, their treated water. Actually, I take it back. That's not actually going to be treated water. So what ended up happening is the community is drilling a new well, and their new well water will be $113 a month, largely energy costs because they've had to move their well 2 miles away from their community, and it's the cost of pumping the water back to the community because it's uphill, unfortunately. And then their wastewater will be $65 a month. And the beauty of this system is the well that they're drilling now more than likely will become contaminated with nitrates in the next 5 to 10 years.
Regulatory agencies don't protect us or the environment. The environment has no rights. And so what they do is they tell corporations how much they can pollute the water before the corporations have to worry about when they have to start preparing for an investigation. And the way the system's set up, you have to prove that it was a certain facility
Source, right?
that caused the pollution. And it's very difficult, it's very expensive, and that's why they keep getting away with it.
Yeah, so
Take it to court.
yeah, just to summarize quickly for those folks who are listening on the web. So basically the comment was that we have a system that's set up not to protect the people, not to protect the environment, but to protect the polluters. And it gives them a sense of how much they can pollute before they're likely to get caught. And unfortunately, it's very hard to prove, given the way our laws are written, that a particular polluter is responsible for a particular set of pollution. That's absolutely right. So, underlying all of this, I think Grandma Eggy earlier said greed, whoever did, underlying all of this is greed, fundamentally greed. And I use this not to badmouth our environmental groups because we work closely with many of them. Sierra Club actually has been a huge partner that we've worked well with in California. But in California in 2009, there was a proposal to have an $11.14 billion water bond. $11.14 billion, more than twice the amount of our last water bond. Crazy. The way the dollars shook out, less than 1% of those dollars would have gone to the communities that don't have access to safe drinking water or wastewater. Less than 1%. The rest of it largely was split between the legitimate stakeholders, which are seen as the water contractors who would have gotten their $3 billion continuously appropriated for water storage, also known as dams, and a little over $3 billion would have gone to environmental groups that participated in the process, to land conservation and ecosystem mitigation in the San Francisco Bay Delta. So for us, when we said, hey, this is a bad deal for poor folks, most of the state programs that are going to get cut to cover that $800 million a year, $800 million. We're like, we could almost solve the drinking water problem in California with $800 million. But every year, you're going to send that $800 million check off to pay the debt service on this $11.14 billion bond. That's paying the interest. I mean, it's crazy, just crazy. But the political powers that be, the legitimate stakeholders, which were not seen as legitimate stakeholders, decided this was a good deal for them. So they made the deal. This bond was postponed because they knew it would pass. I mean, it would fail in 2009. It's been postponed to 2012. And so we'll still be fighting this battle in the next year or so. But I work in the Capitol. I risk the relationships I have in the Capitol to say this, but I have to say it because it's the truth. This was driven entirely by politics and greed. It was not driven by the best interests of the people of the state of California. It certainly wasn't driven by the best interests of the folks who don't have access to safe drinking water and wastewater. So what are we doing about this? Because now I've taken you all down the sad, dreary road. So the piece we're doing in California that we're working toward to try and change the momentum, to change what we call it changing the water paradigm, is we have a human right to water bill package. We have 6 bills this year. Our umbrella bill is a bill that just establishes a human right to water in California. California, if we pass this bill and get it signed, would be the first state in the nation to have this policy on the books. Frankly, it's not going to change the story overnight. this bill, I think we're going to pass this bill and the other bills in the package and get them signed. The next day, everyone won't have access to safe drinking water, sadly. But what it does is it gives us a new set of tools, and what we hope more than anything else is it starts to change California's values around water. Because fundamentally, what this comes down to is values. Not money, but values. And when I ask you how much are you willing to pay, I hope that what you're referencing in your brain is how you value things. Not in dollars and cents, because frankly, I don't think you can put dollars and cents on water. For all the reasons that Grandma Aggie and Colleen and Mark talked about this morning. Water is invaluable. But how much sweat, how many tears, what are you willing to give? Because ultimately, again, I think it's going to take everyone giving and everyone taking responsibility. You know, we debated about human right to water, because in California, part of the value we're trying to change is from this rights-based thinking to a responsibility-based thinking. We used human rights because it has international resonance, and we've been working with folks at the international level too, and so we use this terminology, but really what we want people to understand and know is that every person has a responsibility to water. A responsibility to recognize its value for all the things it gives to us, but also its value in just keeping the earth alive, which is a value that we can't even begin to imagine, because none of us have been here long enough. So hopefully our bill package is going to go forward. Also related to this, we have a set of, and we have about 120 organizations that have organized around this fight through something we call the California Water Summit. And the Water Summit has a foundation of values. The two values that were framed around are equity and sustainability. And so we get the social justice piece in the equity side, and sustainability includes things like climate resilience and water quality and the elements that keep our watersheds healthy. So I've told you what we're doing. Here's the part where I tell you what you all can do. For us in California, we keep talking about taking off the rose-colored glasses. We also talk about telling everyone no, that we are no longer going to suspend our disbelief, because that's kind of how it is. It's kind of like we're all watching a movie, and we've all agreed to suspend our disbelief. We've all agreed to take what we're told and to make that how we live our daily lives. And so we're inviting all Californians to take off the rose-colored glasses, to see things how they really are, to really identify the truth, to identify our values around water, and then to craft our management of water in a way that reflects those values, because we think that looks a lot different than what we have right now. So in defining water justice, we see water justice actually as a process, not as a specific, here's how we define it, but that every community should be having this discussion. What is water justice in our community? What are our values around water as a community? How do we want this world to look for our children? And not just, when we talk about this in California, we talk about it beyond water, because water is one part of an integrated system. And this is Mark's contribution, because Winnem and Wintu are actually members of our coalition. Who gets the last drop? Who gets the last drop? And we've had some very interesting conversations about that in California with our members. We have, our members are some of the wisest people I've ever met. And I actually, when I stand up here, I usually say this, and I forgot because I was so overwhelmed by speaking after Grandma Aggie and Mark and Colleen. I usually say this: my words are a collection of the things I've learned from all of our members, from the folks in San Jerardo, from Mark and Colleen. That's Colleen right there with one of the other tribal members, Jesse. What I can say to you is what I've learned from all of them, because they are truly the wisest people when it comes to water, and in particular the Winnem and Wintu, who have thousands of years history that they can draw from. So when we talk about who gets the last drop, it's kind of an interesting conversation, because our folks are like, well, what do you mean the last drop? Water, there's always going to be water, and it's how do we share the last drop? But that's, all right. Sometimes this works and sometimes it doesn't. All right, so the specifics, join the conversation and talk about the definition of water justice in your communities. Water matters to everyone. Collaborate. Again, this is our philosophy. It's not necessarily consistent with every environmental justice group's philosophy, but our philosophy is collaborate. Collaborate across all of your boundaries, because again, ultimately, we think that achieving water justice is going to take a national and international movement at the end of the day to make sure that everyone in this world, on this earth, has access to safe, affordable drinking water. And this little picture is of our Unitarian Universalist allies. And avoid Band-Aids and go for the big change. And these are just a few reasons why we can't afford to fail. Thank you.